DEI in gaming. Let's go.
Oh boy, I guess we're doing this. I've tried to do my best to navigate the waters of social sensitivity, but there is so much intellectual dishonesty on both sides of the aisle that very little progress is ever made, and oftentimes genuine criticism is lost in translation. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, has very much become the boogeyman that is haunting the video game industry, slowly eroding our trust and interest in a lot of games.
One who seeks enlightenment through seeing the world as a whole risks of becoming blind to the things that make the whole.
And it's penetrated discussions around the quality of games, character designs, narratives, heck, even how we play games in the first place. And these are all valid criticisms to make because at the end of the day, we're buying a video game, not a social manifesto. I want more people to feel like they belong because
Or are we?
they do belong. From my perspective, regardless of your nationality, gender, or identity, you're a gamer in my eyes. This isn't about not wanting people in games. This is about being sick and tired of watching companies commoditize people's identities and then go and use them as a shield for bad products. I'm sick of it. While social responsibility and representation is important, at the end of the day, the transaction that's happening is for
Is it though important? Is it really that important? How have we lived our whole lives up to this magical point in time, and suddenly this new thing that turns out is one of the most important things ever in the history of our species, and it was just ignored for all this time and everyone was happy? It's really strange.
engagement, entertainment, and enjoyment, and that's being lost. Today, what I want to do is I want to talk about the real impacts of DEI in gaming, what it is, what it's doing, and where it's going. Video games have always been a controversial medium, partly because they cater to such a wide variety of audiences. Historically, games have been made for children, teens, and adults, which naturally invites conflict and criticism. You have games for all kinds of people, regardless of age, race, gender, or identity, all with different interests, preferences, and expectations. This creates a wide range of opinions and voices about what games should be and what they represent, and oftentimes, those opinions clash. Games are also divided by genre, making the industry even more fragmented. You got players that love action games, role-playing games, sports simulations, or fighting games, all of these different types of players that are
I'm getting confused about the point he's trying to make here a little bit. If games have always been specifically marketed for a group of people, age, a gender, and things like that, preferences, enjoyments, and things of similar nature, then how is any of this a problem now? Why would people just choose to go out of the things that they like and start to just randomly critique people on the completely other side of the aisle that they have not interacted and that have never even really cared about? That just doesn't seem like a thing that's gonna be ever done en masse.
coming to the table with different needs and desires. And when games tackle touchy subjects like violence or sexuality, the controversy only grows. Take, for example, Grand Theft Auto with its portrayal of crime and violence, or the Dead or Alive series with its over-the-top sexualized characters. These games have sparked outrage not just from players, but from outside groups like parents, politicians, and media pundits, many of whom don't even play video games, but still have strong opinions, assuming that all games are made for kids.
Well, those strong opinions are kind of worthless because they don't really care about the opinion. They care about getting a certain demographic of people on their side. So these opinions have never really mattered for gamers. When is the last time a gamer has ever cared about a politician saying, "Oh, GTA is too violent, we need to cut it down"? Well, the only time that people cared if unless someone really actually got them to cut down the violence in GTA, and then everyone would be outraged.
But as the industry has grown, so has its core audience. Many of the people that started playing games as kids are now adults, and they're expecting more mature and complex content. However, as these companies are now seeking to widen their audiences and maximize their profits, they've started to blur the line between who games are made for, which is causing even more friction. Games that were once aimed at a specific group now try to appeal to everyone, and this can result in a mess of conflicting ideas, especially when it comes to the growing influence of diversity, equity, and inclusion in video games.
Yeah, something made for everyone is something made for no one.
Today, DEI has become a hot topic in gaming. We see it in discussions around the failures of games like Concord and Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, where forced inclusivity and awkward character designs have.
Well, this was not a game made for everyone. This was a game made for a very specific group of people in mind, and those people don't exist longer than 5 years on average.
Been called out by fans and critics alike. Now, all eyes are on the upcoming Dragon Age the Veilguard, which many fear could be the next casualty of heavy-handed DEI influence.
Oh, it's gonna be the next casualty, everyone knows. Okay, if you have not noticed that Dragon Age Veilguard is gonna be a complete flop, you must be new to this game.
Fans that worry about the game, like others before it, will fall victim to poorly executed, ham-fisted inclusivity that feels more like a corporate checkbox than a meaningful addition to its story and characters. It feels like a lot of these discussions peaked around 2020, which makes a lot of sense. The video game industry has grown exponentially over the years, overtaking movies, music, and television. And with that came private equity. Most publicly traded companies saw their share prices double during the pandemic, and with that came more investors and fiduciary responsibility. These companies are now
fiduciary responsibility is not a real. Okay, it is technically a real thing, but fiduciary responsibility is pretty much just the uninitiated boogeyman of the person who doesn't understand finance and businesses. Fiduciary responsibility can only be pretty much proven in situations like with CDPR Red in the launch of Cyberpunk 2077. And that's it. Because there they blatantly lie. The evidence is literally there. But for anything else, fiduciary duty is almost impossible ever to prove that anything's happening wrongly. Okay? Look at Ubisoft. Do you think their shareholders would not love to sue the shit out of them for breaking fiduciary duty? But they aren't. And why? Because they can't. Because they can't. Even going full blatantly DEI woke cannot be proven as a breach of fiduciary duty. That's why fiduciary duty is an absolute meme in a lot of aspects.
Expected to grow, not just in projects, but in employees, sales, and audiences. Whereas earlier in this industry's life, they could be casual, jeans at work, gamers making games for gamers. Now the industry leaders need to tighten their tie and show they are worth their money. This brings us to the idea of corporate social responsibility, or CSR, and how DEI fits into that. See, what a lot of people don't talk about is that CSR is the concept that many companies should do more than just chase profits. It's part of their social image to their stakeholders. They're expected to contribute to the greater good by being ethical, environmentally friendly, and socially responsible. DEI is a part of that. On paper, it's about making sure that companies are fair, inclusive, and representative of everyone.
DEI is not a part of that. DEI is a completely separate entity to that concept. The initial concept that he said is literally this, make a volleyball tournament for the disabled or something like that, and then make a bunch of pictures and say how good you are because you helped, do a food drive or something like that. That is that concept. DEI has nothing to do with this. It's just malignant cancer that has kind of grown almost in the same place as that previous thing. That's actually kind of useful and whatnot. But DEI has nothing to do with that because DEI prioritizes completely different aspects.
And that's not inherently bad. But here's the catch. While CSR and DEI are good in theory, they're often used by corporations to make more money. Governments offer tax breaks, grants, and other financial incentives to companies that follow CSR guidelines, and over time, companies simply just comply to maximize their revenue and avoid fines and potential lawsuits.
Yes. Smart companies, by the way, all of them do DEI stuff. But you know how they do it? Well, DEI is evaluated typically once a year or something like that. And all these companies, when the evaluation is gonna hit, start doing all of these woke things, and then after they get their evaluation, they just stop all of the woke things. That's how the game of finance is played.
So instead of implementing DEI in
stupid companies, like gaming companies run by idiots, they continue their DEI shit. And then it ruins them.
Initiatives out of a genuine desire for inclusivity, many companies are simply doing it just to get those benefits. This leads to a lot of issues in creative industries because this not only affects their approach to hiring and management, but also their games, leading to games that feel hollow with characters, stories, and designs that seem more focused on meeting corporate goals than delivering a valuable experience. Anyone who's watching this video right now that's like me, who's worked at a company at a corporate level, knows how these companies view CSR or DEI. They don't care about it. They feign it to the public, joke about it behind closed doors, and oftentimes only comply because they are absolutely terrified of HR lawsuits since Me Too, or they just don't want to get bent over by environmental agencies like the EPA or workers' safety and OSHA because those fines are millions.
The way he describes it goes against what he describes.
Millions of dollars. It's all a racket. It's a cold corporate response to heavy-handed regulation. As an example, in the US, we have OSHA, and it has a metric that's called TRIR, Total Recordable Injury Rate. It's a made-up score that levies the amount of injuries that you've had in a year and puts it into a pretty little equation and pops out a number. And if construction contractors even want to bid, I'm not even talking about work, I'm just saying bid on work, for most facilities, they have to be below a certain score. When you have companies that are out there that have tens of thousands of employees, accidents are bound to happen. And with such strict rules in place, they often find ways to blame employees, fire injured employees, or hide injuries to be able to protect themselves.
Effectively, is this just a giant advertisement for Trump because he doesn't like these sort of regulations because they stifle production, they stifle business, they do a lot of things.
Or in most cases, what they do is they lean on consulting companies, a multi-billion-dollar industry of companies that's ran by the self-same people that made the rules in the first place. DEI has its own racket. The DEI consulting industry is valued at $97.2 billion in 2023 and is projected to reach $131.1 billion by 20.
A projection that I completely disagree with, considering companies like Microsoft have said, yeah, DEI is useless. We're gonna get rid of our department because it has only damaged us. And Microsoft does it, you know, you know things are gonna go that way. Because again, Microsoft, Google, do I need to go on my rant how the Fed wakes up every day early at 6 just to be at Google's headquarters to knock on the door and please tell them how they print money? Because Microsoft is one of the absolutely most juggernautic companies in creating cash, if not the highest juggernaut in creating cash. For every literal cent that Microsoft puts into something, they get dollars. They get dollars bills back. It is absolutely insane, okay? And if Microsoft says the DEI is useless and shuts it down, a lot of things aren't going to follow.
2031. Snake oil salesmen developing new terms and sensitivity training to scare companies into using their services to keep them safe from regulators and lawsuits. You know, we've seen both games media and consultancy agencies say some pretty outrageous things over the last few years. So I want to ask you this. Do you think that these regulators and these consultancy agencies actually want people to get along? Do you think it really is about sensitivity? Because from my perspective,
no, it's the same as the homelessness epidemic. Exactly. You know, the homelessness epidemic, everyone wants to get rid of it, except the people who are trying to get rid of it, because surprise, surprise, when you fix a problem, someone's out of a job. So the problem can never be fixed, but it can only grow in size and scale because no one wants to, not have a job in this case. And these jobs get paid a lot. So the incentive is there to keep the problem around, obviously.
Looks like division is a very lucrative industry. You know, right now we have a lot of publishers and studios that are making a ton of money, billions of dollars. They're overtaking other industries. That's inviting in a lot of investors. And these companies have to show that they're growing. They got to show that they can make more money in the future. So these companies are triple dipping. They're going in, they're checking boxes for tax advantages. They are bringing in these consultancy agencies to make sure they're above board. And on top of that, they're using these oversafe work practices to try to make sure that they can avoid any lawsuits. They're trying to protect their money as much as they can and grow it as much as they can. But at the end of the day, the products that we're receiving are a product of that workplace. Now, this isn't to say that the people that are taking advantages of these programs, specifically like grants and things like that, don't deserve that grant or don't deserve the position that they got as a result of it. I think a lot of people fail to recognize, or
Most of them don't. Let's be completely real. If you're a DEI hire, you probably were not the best for the job in any case.
conveniently forget that you have to have the grades to be able to get through these programs in the first place and to graduate to actually even get the job.
No, not really. Anyone remember the greatest black man who ever got into Oxford, whose letter of appliance was just the N-word spammed like 200 times or something? And Oxford said, "Yeah, that's the kind of people we need." No, no, this is not about being qualified enough. Okay, the whole concept of DEI's existence means that these people are technically not qualified enough, but they don't want to, but they need to be hired. That's why DEI exists in the first place, for hiring and whatnot. These people are not qualified enough. They don't have the experience, education, knowledge, anything, but they still need to be hired because that's what DEI does. And that obviously invites catastrophe. The wind can bend the world, but it seemingly just breaks the idiot.
And when it comes to actual diversity hiring, I don't think there's probably anybody that's out there that thinks that they were hired or even knows that they were hired because they were there to check a box. These are suits. These are CEOs that only care about growing profits and their own personal image. They're looking at this like a two-pronged approach. They're doing it to their games and they're doing it to their workplace. They're hiring in people that don't have the merit, they don't have the skill, but they don't really care about that because as long as they're there, well, they can get the tax break. They have the numbers that they need to actually have to either show to regulators or to show to their board of directors or whatever it might be. And then at the same time, they're using the same ideology, these same practices that are being taught to them by consultancy agencies in their video games to try to grow their audience beyond what it is. And it's going to impact the quality of your games when you do that for long enough, often enough. And I think one of the reasons why we've seen so much of it recently is because the games that we're getting are coming from that growth initiative. They're coming from the time where the video game industry really boomed. And that's why we're seeing a lot of games that are coming out that just lack quality at the end of the day. I'm not even talking about the ideology or messaging. I'm just talking about just the general quality of games that are delivered, how buggy they are, frame.
Yeah, we all agree with this. Obviously, I have talked about this a lot. Ubisoft, Bethesda, Blizzard. There's barely any people with talent left there.
Rate issues, all kinds of different problems. When you have companies,
well, barely for Blizzard, for Ubisoft and Bethesda, it's completely joker.
That are this big, that have this big of issues, well, their problems become apparent pretty quick. Thomas Mahler, studio lead behind Ori and the Blind Forest and their upcoming game No Rest for the Wicked, responded to a comment from Elon Musk that simply said, DEI kills art. Mahler wrote, I've never retweeted anything from Elon before because I'm a game designer, but I very much agree with this statement. The problem with DEI isn't in its principle, but it's in the way it's being implemented.
Yep.
Years before DEI became a thing, we had Quentin Tarantino, a white...
And also, DEI, by the way, is supported by false evidence, if you will. It's not really false, it's technically there. But, as always, statistics are a bitch that not a lot of people honestly understand. And one of the statistics that we talked about, and by the way, we predicted the outcome of this, I don't remember how many months ago that was. It was about the fact that DEI proves to make more money for companies because they look at the most accomplished companies and they look at this and they are like, hey, wait, all of these super accomplished companies have on typical a higher percent of, for example, blacks, Asians, and whatnot working. And then they instantaneously are like, well, that just proves that diversity just makes the workplace better. But the reality is very simple, and some of you already know the absolute fallacy of this idiotic statement. It's just the fact that these companies typically that make the most money just hire the best people around, okay? And that by default means that they're gonna be hiring the absolute best black people, absolute best Asian people, absolute best white people, absolute best everything. They don't actually care what your skin color is or what your ethnicity or whatever it is. They're gonna hire you no matter what if you actually prove to be the best. And since these companies pay the most, naturally, all these people who are actually the best, completely independent of any ethnicities or whatever's, they're gonna gravitate towards there because it probably pays the biggest salaries, and they get hired because they prove that they are capable. That's how this game works. And yet, these people who are doing these researches, and it's honestly sad to even call it research, are just looking at these companies and saying, "Oh, look at that! They have more black and women in them." Yeah, because they literally scooped up all the most capable people of everything. That's why they have them more.
Director make a movie about a badass black dude who buddied up with a white dude. My point being, just let artists be artists and DEI will happen naturally. Ultimately, a good message has to come from the heart and not from indoctrination. And I think this is the heart of the issue, indoctrination, because that's what it
Stalin would disagree, my comrade.
feels like. Many people have grown up, like myself, being taught that everyone is human, identities are a feature, character is the person. But over the last few years, it feels like people want to rewrite that, making someone's outward appearance and their lineage the only thing that matters. And if you question it from the perspective of equality, you're chastised by developers, the media, and those who don't care for nuance. I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is being pushed by people that lack the care, talent, class, and most importantly, the character to be able to tell diverse stories or represent a variety of.
He is right about that. People without talent, the weak, should never be respected. They should never be taken seriously, and they should never be allowed the rights of the powerful. The weak destroy the world by making it weaker. The weak can only become powerful if everyone else is pushed to be weaker. The weak cannot become powerful on their own. They become powerful through the masses. And they could become powerful through subversion. Because the powerful don't actually care to love you. The powerful don't care to subvert you. The powerful just achieve things because they are powerful. There is a natural gradient in this world that separates people. That is not skin color. That is not gender. That is simply, are you strong or not? And the weak will never be strong. And so we have gotten where we have got.
People. If employees are demanded to make characters, stories, and games that appeal to specific identities alone, games aren't being made organically. They're coming off a factory press, molded to suit whatever a marketing department's idea of diversity is. Gay characters with half-shaved and colored hair, the token black character with the same haircut from an urban upbringing.
I was gonna say, when he said the black character, I was gonna pause and say, yeah, with that one haircut. Yeah, dude, I love that dude, are you even a black person if you don't have dreads? I don't think you are. You need to have dreads, and if you're a woman, a wig.
Backed by a hip-hop soundtrack and the evil white villain. We see it across all forms of media. It's unoriginal, it's tacky, it's offensive, and it's done for all the wrong reasons. Sweet Baby Incorporated, a narrative consulting company that has become infamous for pushing some of the most extreme and heavy-handed DEI initiatives in gaming. The company has made headlines not for their approach to storytelling, but for the lack in quality of games that they've consulted on and the controversial statements from its leaders that show just how little integrity this company has. A figure from Sweet Baby Incorporated went as far to say that marketing teams need to be terrified of the consequences if they don't make their games culturally sensitive, implying that fear and coercion should drive creative decisions rather than genuine artistic expression. Perhaps one of the more revealing statements came from one of their leaders giving a presentation saying their ultimate goal was to burn the industry to the ground. These extreme views highlight just how far removed this company is from the art and value that developers bring. Instead of enhancing the creative process or developing.
By the way, I haven't ever talked about this about Sweet Baby Inc., but there is a huge difference. Okay, this is Kim Belair, if I remember correctly, her name. She is not weak. She knows what she's doing, and she just doesn't give shit. She just wants money. Okay? She understands what she's doing, and she's forcing other people to comply to her through power. Okay? She's not what you would call a weak person. But this right here, this is just someone who wants to make others as weak as them. Their views, their everything, just gives it away so hard. She's just an evil grifter who doesn't care about the consequences to society because she knows she's gonna outlast it. But this is just weakness.
It came from one of their leaders giving a presentation saying their ultimate goal was to burn the industry to the ground. These extreme views highlight just how far removed this company is from the art and value that developers bring. Instead of enhancing the creative process or developing authentic, meaningful stories, their approach is rooted in pushing divisive ideologies and using scare tactics to remain relevant as the consulting industry makes billions of dollars a year. Just look at the way that people are represented in these games and what games they're doing it in, and tell me why people shouldn't get upset. Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, a game aimed
Mr. Ma'am.
at DC comic fans and young men, making journal entries about Wonder Woman and oppressive toxic masculinity, retconning Mr. Freeze into Miss Freeze, creating an abomination in character design, all the while delivering horrible gameplay in an uninspired shooter. These are things that customers didn't knowingly sign up for when they purchased the game. Many believe that they were buying a game from a beloved studio who developed award-winning titles. That's not what they got. Take Concord, a game that was criticized well before its release for its awkward attempt at forced diversity. The marketing felt contrived, a Marvel knockoff, highlighting character designs that seemed to tick boxes rather than focusing on the game's actual content, which shone through because once the game was released, it was a game that was
Concord doesn't have one black Michael Jackson, it has two. That's how diverse it is.
too busy trying to be safe that it appealed to nobody. A game that came from PlayStation, where players are invested in their platform and have high expectations for high quality games, only to find out that this is what PlayStation's leadership thinks of their fans and what their investment is worthy of. A lot of people have dunked on Dustborn, a game that felt more like a caricature of diversity rather than a game aimed at a genuine audience, one that was heavily criticized for how poor of a job it pretended to do.
Purely made from EU grants, by the way. My taxes went to that.
Representing the people that it was apparently made for. Social criticisms aside, its developer actually admitted in a recent interview that they knew that people don't like their games and they knew that people wouldn't like this game. Yet,
yeah, exactly. But they got the grant.
Somehow, they're astonished by the backlash for how ridiculous the game was. My biggest criticism here is the fact that this developer, the studio lead, knew that this game wasn't going to make any money. They knew that it was a game that nobody wanted, and they took millions of dollars in government assistance to make it. Taxpayer dollars that could have gone to a different Norwegian studio to make a game that people actually wanted. We're now seeing developers shoehorn ideologies and diversity into their video games without any regard for context, narrative integrity, or the desires of their audience. They're completely ignoring those things. Take infamous examples like characters being redesigned or elements being removed from remasters or remakes purely to fit modern DEI standards. Lara Croft, Silent Hill 2, whether it's changing character models, gender, or backstory, not to serve the plot, but for a specific agenda. It all results in tokenism, where characters become caricatures of the very identities they're supposed to represent. Instead of nuanced, well-rounded individuals, we get stereotypes, over-the-top, one-dimensional characters that feel more like corporate creations than artistic expressions. It's no wonder that players are frustrated. When we're buying a game, we are entering into an exchange where we are giving our money and expecting a product that was crafted with care, creativity, and respect for the audience, but that respect isn't there anymore. Instead, what we are seeing more and more is the injection of forced messaging, hamstringing the creative process. Games that are starting to feel more like manufactured products made to meet quotas and marketing objectives rather than passion projects that are inviting gamers, inviting players into engaging and meaningful worlds. The issue with DEI isn't about the principles themselves, it's about how it's being implemented. Like Thomas Mahler said, DEI will happen naturally if artists are allowed to be artists.
Again, conflicting statement. DEI shouldn't exist if we believe that it will take its natural course. So DEI's existence in the first place is an abomination abomination of everything that we stand for. So yeah, you can't really be on the side that DEI should exist, but if we just allow things to happen normally, it's gonna still happen. Okay, these two things are fundamentally opposite. They are mutually exclusive to one another. It's either that or that. It can't be both.
Problem arises when corporate interests take over and diversity becomes a commodity to sell rather than a genuine attempt to reflect on the world that we live in. It leads to a disconnect between players and the games, and ultimately between the creators and their audience. And I think that's a fair and valid criticism to make because it's something observable. We can see it happening in the industry today. And while we've had a lot of games that have come out, absolutely incredible games, at the same time, the reason why players are so upset, the reason why this is such a popular talking point is because it's happening within the foundation of the industry. It's happening to the companies that are the very pillars that elevated the industry. The companies that made the games that made us gamers, Activision, EA, Blizzard, Xbox, PlayStation, the list goes on. We get why they're doing it. It's all for money. But the funny thing is that they're losing a lot of it doing what they've been doing. And it's got me thinking, I've noticed over the last couple of years, some of these breakout successes that we've seen have reached incredible heights that I don't think that they would have reached if it wasn't for the fact that the industry is in the state that it's in. They create.
Well, yeah, I guess obviously, yes, this is obviously true. Yeah, if other games would be better, Baldur's Gate 3 probably would have not gotten as popular. You can gain the greatest success in the shallowest of pools. That's the thing, because everyone's gonna just go towards you by default.
This situation. They swung the pendulum in one direction and now it's stuck. And because of that, their competition is getting richer by the day. They're getting more fans, they're getting more support, and it's going to make it even more difficult for some of these companies to be able to back out of the position that they're in. Baldur's Gate 3, Black Myth Wukong, Stellar Blade, Space Marine 2, Helldivers 2, Pal World. There's a huge list of games that we've seen come out over the last couple of years that have been absolute bangers, and there's an ocean of difference with the quality and feel of those games and some of these patronizing attempts at guilting us out of our money. Even more.
He's effectively saying that those are games that don't have characters that just come up to you and say, "I'm gay," and that's it. That now you have to deal with that, and they remind you that they are gay every single time. And then at one point they're also black and gay, and that's beautiful. And if you don't agree with that, you're a bigot. Oh yeah. Anyway, I honestly feel that that's the whole video. Legendary drops, 10 out of 10. Bye.